Hello flight simmers, welcome back to the channel. This video is going to be part 3 of my cockpit build, and we're going to be looking at the starboard side of the cockpit. So as mentioned in part 1 of my cockpit build, this cockpit came with some pretty simple side consoles and auxiliary consoles, so I wanted to change those out for something more accurate. Amongst our Viper Pits group is a German engineer by the name of Martin Schmidt, and he builds high quality F-16 replica parts right down to the exact dimensions. So I had purchased his consoles and auxiliary consoles among other parts, and my first order of business was I wanted to get those inside. It was rather simple to do as they're made out of steel, and all it took was some aluminum brackets and rivets, and I was able to get that in place by using documents found on the internet in regards to height and angles and whatnot, and I got that in nice and sturdy. It's actually very sturdy because I wanted to make sure that it could support the side stick controller. So the side stick controller is the real deal. So when I installed those consoles, I wanted to make sure that they could support it. Anybody watching this video knows that the F-16 stick doesn't move a whole lot and quite a bit of force is placed upon it, so I wanted to make sure that it could support that. And speaking of which, I'm going to rain on some people's parades here and show you that the stick actually does move. I read time and time again on several different forums whether or not the stick moves, and I can tell you without a doubt it does move. It actually makes quite a bit of difference. I had flown several years with an FCC or a real sim FSSB that doesn't move at all, and when I used this for the first time, I found the movement, especially when you're pulling the stick aft, makes a huge difference. You can almost feel how much of a G-load you're putting on the jet, so it makes a huge difference, and I enjoy it quite a bit. The stick was fairly easy to interface with the sim. I used a Leo Bodner joystick board for all the switches and the 2-axis, and just used some amplifiers to amplify the signal so the computer could read enough volts to read the axis, and yeah, it's pretty much that simple. That's all it really took. If you're paying attention to the layout of this cockpit, you'll see it's an actual PX3 layout, meaning it doesn't have the liquid oxygen gauge, because this PX3 would use the OBOGs, and just to where the oxygen regulator, the air source panel, and the avionics are just out of place compared to a normal, let's say, US block that you would see, or a PX2 for instance. When I started my cockpit, I was going to do a PX3, so block 5052, but as I was collecting parts, I ended up getting, for instance, this gauge is for a General Electric and not a Pratt Whitney, so then I changed it to a block 50, which would be a PX2. I had the liquid oxygen gauge. I could easily put that in. I could easily reconfigure these panels to a PX2 layout, but with my scuba tank underneath, the way everything is placed and the way everything fit, it actually fits better with this configuration. So it was a little bit of a compromise I had to do, and I just left the right side here as a PX3 layout. So starting on the sidewall here, this is a real interior sidewall. It's got the real bulb housings. However, I did put warm white LEDs inside. I wanted to use LEDs to make it more efficient, and also gives it that nice original bulb look. I'm going to just place this over here, different angle. It's got the real compass correction card, seat adjust as you saw in the ejection seat video, that works. Wrist rest from Real Simulator. I don't really ever use that, and I hear a lot of pilots, the real pilots, never use it either. It's got an elbow rest or forearm rest, whatever you want to call it, as well. This one's kind of used quite a bit. Rest your arm on, help you get finer control. CRU bracket holds the CRU. And well, that's about it for the sidewall. It's pretty simple. Starting in the rear here, this vent is fake. It's actually made out of wood that I got off another builder. It looks pretty damn realistic, so I just put that in there for a little bit of aesthetics. Map box, the lid is real, but the box part is a fiberglass replica. The reason why I swapped it out is the original one has these little fasteners on each side, and rather than tearing them off a real one. I just used this fiberglass replica one since I needed a smoother back so the seat can rotate, so that didn't really bother me too much whether it's real or not. This data transfer unit is from RealSim. Excellent little item. I'm hoping they're going to finish it up and make the actual cartridge that goes inside there, but it's pretty cool. It's got all the real light plate on it. This avionics power panel is real. It's got all the proper switches and whatnot. I did replace these two. That's why they look a little duller. They don't have a shiny surface here. I replaced those two because they won't work. And this has the real INS align switch, which is kind of cool because you have to push it in to turn it. Back behind it is a real, I don't know if you can see that. Let me pull this out of the way here. Oh, there we go. Is a real anti-ice panel. Oxygen regulator is real. That's hooked up to a scuba tank and through the CRU here. At the end of the video, I'll show you exactly how that works. I just got to pull some stuff out. It's got a real air conditioner. Well, actually, all these panels are real. Let's just say that part right now. Air condition panel works. I hooked it up to a blower, so by turning that on, can't really adjust the temperature, but it just basically turns the fan off and on. Kind of adds a cool little effect when you're flying. The interior light panel is hooked up to a light dimmer control panel. I purchased off another sim builder who designed it himself. It works pretty cool. It controls the consoles, the instrument panel, and of course it wasn't enough to control the intensity brightness on the real panels because of the amperage, but talking with a lot of different pilots, a lot of them had indicated to me that most of the time these jets, the backlighting is on all the time and they don't really mess with it, and it's just basically on or off. So, and even when you're flying this, if you look in the videos, they're not overly bright, so I really didn't see a need to even worry about having a variable brightness. So it's just either on or off for me, and it works great. So, you know, that works fine. This is actually a replica from Mike's panels, this Zeroice panel. It's just a metal plate, and the real one doesn't have backlighting or anything. I imagine it's all just laser or etched or something like that. So, you know, pretty much serves the purpose of the real one. HUD panel and sensor panel are all real, all the real switches and whatnot. Nuclear consent panel is there. I actually use this switch here to turn off and on my Pokies relay board. There's a reason for that, but anyways, some of the switches in here I just use to control other functions if they don't have any function in the sim, basically. So all these panels, I'll pull this one out here. Basically, I gutted every single panel I got because they're wired up with a lot of redundancy and military connectors, and I wanted to simplify everything, you know, especially for a computer simulator. All you're doing is emulating keyboard strokes. So I basically gutted them, tore all the wire, rewired them into just a simple DB connector. I got rid of all the military ones. A lot of guys think I'm crazy for that, but you know, if they ever break or anything, they can be really hard to find and expensive. So where these things are super, super cheap, and I literally have hundreds of them as spares. So I just find it just makes life really easy. So that's kind of what I stuck with. So this auxiliary console, the gauges on it are Beta Innovations, fantastic gauges, super high quality and good backlighting, as you can see. Unfortunately, that company no longer exists, but I do have a lot of spare controller boards and whatnot, so these gauges should last me the lifetime of the pit. This clock is actually the first item I bought for this entire cockpit, you know, maybe 5 years ago, I guess. And I had no idea they actually made them with no backlight. So, so there's no backlight on that. But 2 days ago, I literally bought one off eBay. So I will be swapping that out for one that has backlighting on it. The hydraulic AB light plate is real. The compass is BI as well. The fuel quantity indicator is AIC, kind of a cheaper quality gauge, but as you saw in my cockpit my ramp start video, you saw that kind of does the job. This master caution panel is real. It's kind of cool. Sorry, caution panel is real. Very easy to change these bulbs. You just pop these out. You can swap them. So when you're doing maintenance, that makes life easy. PFLD is Martin Schmidt display. Really good, high quality, excellent display. So for the oxygen system, I had quite a few guys that were asking about this and waiting for this part of the video, but I gotta be honest, this was the simplest thing that I've done in this entire cockpit. And all it really required was a scuba tank and a normal regulator that divers use, and then the hose. So if you go to any local diving shop and buy yourself a tank or regulator, you're pretty much going to get this exact setup. And then all I had to do was find a reducer fitting. You can see right there with the blue elbow. I just took it in. I took in that regulator and the hose to a hydraulic shop and said I just need a reducer end to fit the female to male end. If that makes any sense. Whatever. I just kind of brought it in, and we played around with a bunch of fittings till we got one that fit. And really, that's all was required. You know, so this tank, I think these are like something like 3,000, 4,000 psi, and they run into this regulator that regulates it to about 150, and then it runs into the actual cockpit regulator, which also brings it down to 150, regulates it to 150 psi. So you're talking about a redundant system as it is. So, you know, it works. It's pretty much that simple. It just runs in through the hose. You can see right here in the CRU, goes into the mask. And it's pretty much that simple. That's all that's required. I looked at other cockpit builders who have done it, and they seem to have set up a lot of redundant safety valves and whatnot. And you know, there's nothing wrong with being safe, but while talking to some divers at my work, you know, they pretty much made it pretty simple, explained it pretty simple that, you know, these tanks work fine for them under pressure, so there's no reason why this tank and setup wouldn't work fine for me where there's no pressure. So I didn't bother with any of the redundant safety valves and all that. I just don't think it's really required. So yeah, guys, it's really that simple. So there you have it. That's part 3, the starboard side of the cockpit. Stay tuned. We'll get part 4 coming where we're going to talk about the port side. Again, if you like these videos, please like and subscribe. Until then, we'll catch you next time.